Okay, the first problem that I've chosen is already factored. You're already given two factors, and by the zero product property, when two quantities are multiplied together and they equal zero, then one or both of them are equal to zero. So I can set each of these two factors equal to zero. And solve. Now, either you remember where the sign is equal to -1, or you think about the graph, and this is where the graph is really convenient for you. Where the sign is equal to -1 is when x is equal to 3 pi over 2. I don't want you to think of 270, I want you to think of 3 pi over 2. The tangent, where is the tangent equal to 1? Well, let's sketch the tangent graph again just to refresh your memory. Okay. So, first of all, you want to identify the quadrants, because I think that's important. We know that the tangent is positive in the first quadrant and in the third quadrant. Now, the first quadrant would be here to have a value of 1, and the third quadrant would be here of a value of 1. Now, you should remember that the tangent is equal to 1 for 45 degrees. 45 is pi over 4. That would be your first quadrant. Then I want you to think of putting pi over 4 in the third quadrant. There's a solution of pi over 4 in the first quadrant and 5 pi over 4 in the third quadrant. Okay, similar to the last problem, this is already factored. So I can set each of these factors equal to 0. And then solve. So I have the cosecant x is equal to 2. And the cotangent x equals -1. So now I'm going to go to the reciprocal. The reciprocal of cosecant is sine. So if the cosecant of x is 2, then the sine of x, which is its reciprocal, is 1/2. And tangent and cotangent are reciprocals of each other. So the tangent of x would be equal to the reciprocal of -1, which is also -1. Perhaps that the sine of 30 degrees is equal to 1/2, and 30 degrees is pi over 6. Now that's the first quadrant. We also know that the sine is positive in the second quadrant. So take the angle of pi over 6, and we want the angle from initial to terminal. So pi is 6 pi over 6 minus pi over 6 is 5 pi over 6 for the second quadrant angle. The cotangent equal to -1. The cotangent was +1 for pi over 4. But the quadrants that would have a -1 are the second quadrant and the fourth quadrant. So we're going to put that 45-degree angle, or pi over 4, in each of those two quadrants. If I put it in the second quadrant, I have pi over 4, but I'm looking for this angle that it comes around this way. 4 pi over 4 minus pi over 4 is 3 pi over 4. And in the fourth quadrant, I'm going to put, again, pi over 4. But now you have to think of 2 pi as being 8 pi over 4. Minus pi over 4 is 7 pi over 4. So there are 4 solutions: pi over 6, 5 pi over 6 for the sine part of it, and 3 pi over 4 and 7 pi over 4 for the tangent part of it. Because actually, we're setting each of these factors equal to 0 and solve. So the tangent x equals -1, and 2 sine x equals 1, sine x equals 1/2. Well, we just did that problem. Because the sine of 30 is 1/2, and I know that is pi over 6 in the first quadrant. And I know that when I place that pi over 6 as a reference angle, I'm getting 5 pi over 6 in the second quadrant. I also know that the tangent of x equals +1 is 45, but I'm placing that pi over 4 in the second quadrant because tangent is negative in the second, and getting 3 pi over 4. And I'm also placing it in the fourth quadrant. And 8 pi over 4 minus pi over 4 is 7 pi over 4. So actually this is the same problem that we just had. So again, it's already factored, so I can set each of these factors equal to 0. So 2 sine x equals the square root of 3. Sine of the angle x is equal to the square root of 3 over 2. That would be in the first quadrant and the second quadrant. 2 cosine x equals 1. Cosine x equals 1/2. That would be in the first quadrant and the fourth quadrant where cosine is positive. Now what angle has as its sine the square root of 3 over 2? 60. And 60 is pi over 3. Now if I place pi over 3 in the second quadrant, what is the angle from initial to terminal in the second quadrant that would have a reference angle of pi over 3? Exactly. Pi is now going to be 3 pi over 3 minus pi over 3, making this angle in the second quadrant 2 pi over 3. Now, what angle has a cosine of 1/2? Sine of 30 is 1/2. Cosine of 60, they're cofunctions. So it would be 60, which is pi over 3. And now we're going to place pi over 3 in the fourth quadrant. What is the angle that comes around from initial to terminal? So think of 2 pi as being 6 pi over 3 minus pi over 3 is 5 pi over 3. So we're getting actually just 3 solutions because we repeat the pi over 3.